Hi there, everyone. Just some ordinary dude here, and welcome to another edition of Discussions with the Dude. Today, I'm joined by a user known as JPOmare. How are you?
Hello there, dude. It's nice to finally be on my first podcast. This is a milestone for me since all I really ever do on YouTube is just archive videos, clips, and make speakonia videos. I don't know if you've ever heard of those before. It's where you take a TTS program. I guess it's like the retro version of AI, but you use computerized voices to dub over characters like
Yeah.
popular children's characters from TV shows and cartoons.
Okay. Well, it's quite interesting. Now, one thing some of you may know about JPOmare, if you've seen him around on the likes of DeviantArt or the subreddit for the Loud House, is that he's a very big fan of the Casagrandes. Now, of course, the Casagrandes was a spin-off for the Loud House, created around the same time as season 4 of that show. So much so that a good chunk of season 4 of the Loud House was dedicated to episodes of the Casagrandes, actually. But anyway, the Casagrandes, it was obviously planned very early on because even season 2 had basically what a pilot episode, Relative Chaos, the loudest mission, which already set up the premise of the Casagrandes. So they were obviously planning on doing this very early on. As soon as they introduced the main family, they obviously wanted to do something with Bobby and Ronnie Ann. And by the time we get to season 4 in 2020, the show had kicked off with its first of 3 seasons. And what's interesting here is that both myself and JPOmare here have very different experiences and perspectives on this show. Now, I've predominantly been a Loud House fan. Saying that, I have watched some of the more notable episodes of the Casagrandes. I haven't seen all of them. I've seen about maybe 50% of them, give or take. The ones I have seen have mostly been very good. Whereas JPOmare here, now, he's actually probably a bigger fan of the Casagrandes than the main show. In fact, he's going to tell you something right now, and what's that, JP?
Well, it's funny you should mention. You see, it happened back in 2023 when we were celebrating my niece's 4th birthday, and she and a friend of hers named Marley were watching an episode. We're watching a marathon of the Casagrandes on the TV, and
Yeah.
I just sort of caught a glimpse of it. I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty funny.
Yeah.
The first episode I ever saw was I believe it's called Pero Malo, the one where their dog Lalo gets switched with his evil twin, who's owned by the character Becky.
Yeah.
And yes, that's the first time I was exposed to Becky, too. And I
Okay,
was like,
that
Jesus,
would kind of explain.
this girl's a firecracker.
Yeah, I get that kind of explains why you're a fan of hers. Yeah. So the Casagrandes is actually what you got into first, wasn't it? This was your first experience with any Loud
This was
House
my
media.
first experience with any Loud House media, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest. I've heard of the show back when it came out. I've even seen a few glimpses of it here and there when I was
Yeah.
working on videos, but I never really actually sat down and watched an episode.
Yeah. So
In
you're another one
fact,
of the latecomers to the show in a lot of ways because yeah,
exactly.
I
I
sort of
am.
started.
I'm a late loud bloomer,
Yeah,
I guess you could
and
say.
that's probably benefited you to a point because I've been a fan of the show for nearly a decade now, and to say that my enthusiasm isn't what it once was, yeah. Whereas you have got into it relatively recently, so obviously your enthusiasm and passion for it is still a lot fresher and stronger than mine probably is right now. So in that
Probably.
respect, yeah, in that respect, it probably did benefit you to get into it a bit later on. Um, yeah, but obviously, yeah, with the Casagrandes, it is similar to the later seasons of the Loud House in terms of its tone, pacing, structure, sense of humour, what it focuses on, etc., etc. It focuses on a lot of like a range of different characters. The main difference, I guess, is that hang on, the main family is obviously the city is different. So obviously, there's a suburban setting for the Loud House. There's a great big
Yes,
city setting for the
exactly.
Casagrandes, and obviously, you know, different
Yeah,
race
that's why
family,
I
that
think.
sort of thing. Yeah.
That's why I always say there's like key differences, despite everyone's thinking, "Oh, this is just a
Yeah.
Latino cut and paste
Well,
of the
I
Loud
think
House."
the
But I'm
reason
like,
they believe
"There's
that is the plots. A lot of the stories are very similar. Like
true.
they could have
I mean,
maybe
I
done a
get
bit
it.
more to differentiate the TV shows. I think like a lot of there's a lot of like copied elements. Like Ronnie Ann becomes more like Lincoln than she was before the Casagrandes started, if that makes sense. And her
Yeah, I
friend group does
remember
become more
going
like
back
Lincoln's group.
to
Yeah,
when I decided to go back and watch the Loud House, and I was actually shocked to learn, oh my God, Ronnie Ann was a bully.
yeah.
She was
She
Lincoln's
was
bully.
yeah,
Holy
it was a
crap.
very different character. She was a very different character back then. She even had a different voice actor. She had I think her name was
Yeah, I
Brianna
know. I
Yiddy.
noticed the difference in her voice when
Yeah,
I went back and watched season one of the Loud House. I'm like, that is so off-putting. I'm so used to
yeah.
to the voice I heard the
Isabella
first time when
Alvarez.
I
Yeah,
started.
she's the one who took over at the beginning of season 4. Literally just as they were starting up the Casagrandes, they obviously wanted a different voice actor, and they found Isabella. And to be fair, she does play the part very well for the way that the direction they were taking her character in at that point. They wanted to make her a bit more like Lincoln, a little bit, nicer and softer, a bit more
A
well-rounded.
lot
Whereas
lighthearted.
yeah. Whereas before she was sort of like a tough, surly bully type, um, with a soft centre, of course. But yeah, she was a very different character before then. And I think the fact that
Exactly.
they changed the voice to match the new direction for the character. Some people like it, some people didn't. Personally, I don't mind it. Although I would have maybe. I don't mind the fact that they changed the character to a point because obviously some of it could be justified by character development. But maybe they could have gone a little less far of it. They could have kept a little bit more of that toughness in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, even though they did alter her character a bit, I do still see a little bit of the tough girl in her,
Yeah.
especially when she's roller skating.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. They kept some of the qualities in her character, but I think it's the fact
Well,
that
not
the Casagrandes, as a whole, Ronnie Ann, the setting, the friend group, everything, the main family, it is very similar to the Loud House, but it is in a new setting. Of course, there are some differences. The characters aren't all exactly the same. Like some of the supporting cast are a little bit different, and
oh,
some of the family members are a bit different as well.
that's another thing I wanted to get on the supporting cast. There was so many unique characters thrown into the mix. Like I mentioned, Becky, that Becky. That's what I say whenever she's on screen.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
man,
I
she's
mean,
like a loose wire, man.
yeah, and then
She
you've got
likes wrestling and all that.
yeah.
She does so many extreme sports stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously
It's
you've
amazing.
got her, then you've got some other great side characters like even some one-offs like La Tormenta and so on. But you
La
also
Tormenta,
yeah
exact. Actually, I think she was in another episode before
yeah
that.
she
She
was in
was
two or
in
three
the
episodes. She was in Saving Face, and before that she was in Lucha Fever with
Lucha
the
Fever.
Casagrandes. Yeah, so she was
Exactly.
in two.
So I wouldn't exactly
Yeah,
call her a one-off. Maybe
well,
uh,
minor
two
character. Yeah.
minor character, but yeah.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see a bit more of her. It would have been nice to see a bit more of Becky. It would have been a bit nice to see more of certain other characters, but there you go.
Like another
Both the
one
Casagrandes and the
is
Loud House have the issue of not always focusing on the best characters or ideas, but hey, that's just a thing that we've had to deal with.
another another great character in there is Ernesto Estrella, the
Oh
TV
yeah,
astrologer. He's played by
yeah.
George Lopez, and I think
All
that's
right.
probably one of his best roles
Yeah,
ever.
yeah. There's quite a lot of like celebrity guest actors. Like obviously
Interesting.
you had Tony Hawkshaw a couple of times in there as well. And some people may not know this, but there was a coach in one episode, and he was played by Jonathan Banks, who of course plays Mike Ehrmantraut in the Breaking Bad universe. And the character that he
Are you
plays
talking
looks
about
basically
Coach
just like
Crawford?
Mike. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's his name? Coach. I forgot his name.
Crawford.
Yeah, that's it.
Coach
Yeah,
Crawford.
and
He's the
he's
one who
voiced
kept
by
spitting coffee in Samir's face.
yeah. But yeah, that's him. He plays Mike Hermtrout in Breaking Bad. And it's basically the same character.
Also,
Yeah.
and I just found this out recently that soccer player in one of my dad's favorite episodes, Bend It Like Abuelo,
Yeah.
he his name is Pico Cito, and he's played by the same guy who's best known for playing Pedro in the Napoleon Dynamite movie.
All right. Pedro, vote for
Yep.
Pedro. I remember that. I've never actually watched that movie, but I remember there was an epic rap battles of history starring
Yeah. When I was
Napoleon
going,
Dynamite, and he's wearing a shirt saying "Vote Pedro."
yep. And going back to La Tormenta, she's played by the same girl who played in that movie Encanto.
Yeah. Isn't
She
she
played the
played
main
by
character.
this? Isn't she voiced by the same person who does Maria Santiago? Somali Molentano.
In Lucha Fever, she was, but in the show, the
Yeah.
actual
Saving
Casagrandes
face. Yeah.
show,
Yeah.
she's played by. Hold on, I'm gonna look it up real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, because they do change a lot of voice actors, don't they? Um,
Uh, Stephanie Beatriz.
okay.
That's who played that in Canto. It's uh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
she was also Goblin Mallard in the 2017 DuckTales when they did that
Oh yeah. Oh,
Darkwing
that's
Duck
cool. Yeah.
episode.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember that the Ducktales episode where they did the beginning of Darkwing Duck again. Yeah, I do remember that. So yeah. So I mean, to obviously they had a really
Mirabelle
colourful.
Nadriel, that's her name.
Yeah. So obviously, yeah, the show had a very colourful side cast, but I think a lot of some characters that really stuck out, other than the main Casagrande family, I think you have to go with the Changs. They're all very popular
Yes, yes.
characters.
I would.
Sid, Adelaide, Becca, even. Not so much the dad; he's all right. But I think like the Chang women are
I
definitely
would.
like standouts.
Yeah, the Changs are definitely my one of my favorite families in the cast. In fact, my niece Elena, she actually loves Adelaide. She says
Yeah.
that she's her friend. Every time
Right.
she shows up on screen, she's
Yeah.
like, "There's my friend."
Yeah. I mean, like right from
That's
the
so
get. Yeah.
adorable.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I will say, like, for me, I do like the Casagrandes, but one thing I always did have an issue was like the Loud House. Sometimes it focuses on less interesting things, and unlike with the Loud House, which had a
Yeah,
strong enough cast and like I was strongly into it enough to like tolerate the boring episodes. With the Casagrandes, I didn't really do. I just sort of skipped over them, which is why I've only watched about 50% of the episodes. And part of the reason for that is, yeah, I just wasn't as invested in it, and it doesn't have. It has a great cast, but maybe not as strong as a cast as the parent show, which makes sense. It's not been around for as long, but it's like with the Casagrandes, it does a lot of things similar to the Loud House, but maybe in some cases not as good. But if there's one thing I do believe it did improve compared to the Loud House, it's the best friend dynamic between Sid and Ronnie Ann, which, let's face
it,
it, is way better than Clink and McLeod. I think everyone agrees on that.
oh, without a doubt. That's why for the first few seasons, 2.5 seasons of The Loud House, I always referred to him as Creepy Clyde because of the whole nose
Oh
bleeding
yeah,
thing he's
yeah.
done
Well,
Maury.
yeah. That was Chris
And it
Savino's
always
doing. The
bothered
guy's an
me.
idiot, but even without that, it's like Lincoln and Clyde. They're too similar. They're too similar as characters to have an interesting dynamic. Like, if you want a version of
Hmm.
two sort of geeky boys hanging out with each other done right, go and watch Gumball and Darwin in the Amazing World of Gumball. They do that way better.
Exactly.
But Lincoln and Clyde, they're just kind of boring when it's just the two of them. Which is why,
Right,
even though I
right.
do believe the later seasons had too much of Lincoln and Friends episodes, I still will admit, at the very least, Lincoln and Friends is preferable to just Lincoln and Clyde. I will still say that. Um,
Hmm.
but with Ronnie and Sid, obviously it's better still when they've got the whole friend group because they're all quite interesting as well. But even just Ronnie and Sid on their
Exactly.
own, are quite interesting. Like they have enough similarities that it's believable they'd be friends, but they have enough differences that they can work off each other in interesting ways. And it's not just like, oh, Ronnie Ann's talking to another version of herself, like Lincoln and Clyde feels like. It's like, no, this is an
Right?
actual, proper, interesting and relatable and, just fun to watch friendship dynamic on screen.
Yeah. To be honest, the only real unique friend in Lincoln's group I always thought was Liam.
And that's mainly because of
I
not.
mean,
That's because of the stuff he did with Lynn Jr., not because of anything he did with the main friends.
right?
Like his
Exactly. And
best two
plus,
episodes are probably Cowpie Kid and fucking the other one, Lynn and Order. Even though I did have some issues with that episode, but Liam was really good in
yeah.
it. I think I did
Yeah, and
rewrite
plus
that
he's good in
episode.
his own
Yeah,
standalone episodes
yeah,
too, like
yeah,
Uncut Gems and There Will Be
yeah.
Mud
Well, they
back
were
in
all. I
season
didn't
7.
particularly care for them that much. They were a bit boring for me, but there you go. Um, Yeah, I don't know, but it's like, I will at the very least admit the friend group and especially Sid are an improvement over Lincoln's friend group. Not that the friend group is bad in
Yeah,
the Loud House, but I will say the Casagrandes does do that one thing better, hands down.
it does. All the friends in Ronnie Ann's group were
Yeah,
unique, where
yeah.
they weren't all
Whereas,
just
yeah,
either annoying or
yeah.
creepy.
I suppose the trade
Like,
off to that is of it. Like I do like all the Casagrandes main family, but there's only like a few that I'd really say are anywhere near on par the Louds, if that makes sense. Like I think the Loud family is the stronger family to watch overall. Not that I don't like the Casagrandes. Like there are some characters like they're okay, like they're sort of there. Like they're good characters like Hector and Carlos Senior and the baby and all that,
yeah,
and
Hector is actually one of my
or
dad's favorite
yeah,
characters,
yeah.
along with Rosa.
Yeah, I mean they're good characters. But I don't think they stand out as well as the Louds. And maybe that's just the fact that the Louds have had far more screen time and time to resonate with audiences. But like when I think of my favourite characters from the entire franchise, like the Loud siblings would take up a good chunk of that list. And there's maybe three
Oh yeah, the
Casagrandes
Loud
family
siblings are
members.
definitely
Yeah,
they're definitely got a bunch of
yeah,
personality.
yeah. Like whereas like the Casagrande family is good, but there's only like maybe three characters I've put in my top 20, maybe four. Whereas like the Loud family, there's like maybe 9 or 10 characters I've put in my top 20. You know what I mean? So I will
I
admit,
mean,
as much as I like the Casagrandes, I will say the Louds are the stronger family, but the Casagrandes does have the
mhm.
stronger friend group.
I mean, I'll admit Carlos's backstory about him being a skateboarder was pretty interesting,
Yeah.
but most of the time he's just a fucking nerd. I
Well,
always
so
say
is
that
Lisa,
whenever
to be
he's done.
fair, but yeah. Then again, Lisa is also a scientific prodigy or whatever, but yeah.
Exactly. But the one backstory I was always interested in was Maria's.
Well, that's another
Her
thing. I
apparent
like Maria, but I think they underutilized her quite a bit. She was in the background quite a lot, which I get makes sense because she was away working at hospitals and everything. But it's like they could have done more with her.
exactly, but I just wish they would have went further with that. I wanted to know
Yeah.
what her her childhood was like. I
Well,
mean, we know she
I've
wanted to
sort of
travel the
made something
world
up a bit lately that I'm sure
and
you've
that she
seen.
used to sneak off to concerts and
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
and of course, there's T-Bone. I
Yeah.
mean, one character I wish they whose story arc didn't get just
Yeah.
blatantly
Yeah.
abandoned
Yeah,
after
again, he was a
season 3.
one-shot character, wasn't he? Like that they sort of brought something interesting in and then did nothing with it. Both
He
shows have
first
that
appeared
problem.
in VIP into the first
Yeah,
Elisa episode.
yeah,
You know, the singer Elisa, played by
right,
Ally Brooke, who sings the show's theme song.
right.
But then then his last appearance was in Date with Destiny, where Bobby and Ronnie Ann scared him off with a pineapple
Oh
pizza,
yeah,
and that's the last we ever see of him.
yeah, yeah. I suppose that is a lot of missed opportunities and
That's
things that were
actually,
dropped. Yeah,
but you know something? That is actually what motivated me
yeah,
to keep watching season 3, just to see
yeah.
if T-Bone comes back.
No, no. It just sort of ended without that. Then again, you've got to remember, I don't think they were necessarily planning on it ending after season 3. So maybe they would have done something if it carried on. But obviously, it ended when it did. I don't think the show was ever that commercially successful, so they obviously ended it after 3 seasons, which is still not
Well, I
bad,
do
don't get
know
me
it had
wrong.
some low ratings,
Yeah,
from what
that, which
I've
is
heard.
interesting because when they brought it back for the movie, it got very high ratings on Netflix. I remember at one point when it first came out, it was like one of the highest rated films for a week or so on Netflix.
Yes,
And I
and I
suppose we've
also
got to
hear
talk
that.
about the movie because you know what, it's
Yeah.
a pretty good way to end things off. I actually probably consider that my favorite, not the best. I think No Time to Spy is a little bit better, but it's probably my personal favorite of the three movies.
Oh,
Uh,
definitely. I definitely like the Casagrandes movie more than the first Loud House
yeah,
movie. I'll
I
give
actually
it
like
that.
the first Loud House movie
And
probably
plus,
more than most,
I
but
like how actually looks like a cinematic film. It
yeah,
doesn't just look like a
yeah,
slightly higher budgeted version of the
yeah.
show like the first Loud House
Well,
movie
even the second
was.
Loud House movie looked like that when you think about it.
Exactly.
Like they for
Definitely.
some reason they put a lot more money into the Casagrandes movie than either of the two main ones.
Well, yeah, I know.
I don't know why that is. Like
Putin
you'd
really
think they
poured his
would, but
heart and soul into that film.
yeah,
And that's
but
what you could tell just by the
yeah,
animation alone.
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think No Time to Spy has the better story, but I think the Casagrandes movie excels in other areas. Obviously, the visual style, the animation. It has better action. I do think there could have been more action in No Time to Spy, for God's sake. You know, you
Yeah.
could have had the
Plus, the
Louds fight in
climax
the.
of the movie was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
all the family members getting together to
and
fight those demons.
and I'm also going
And
to say,
then,
yeah, and as much as everything else that was great about that film, you've got one of the best things to
I
come
mean,
out of
out of
it.
nowhere, Carlos comes out and he's all buff. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what the heck?
yeah, that
When
was
did
just a bit
this
random.
happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's like that's the thing. The Casagrandes got to have a big fight moment, so why couldn't the lads get that? You've got Lynn, you've got Lola, you've got Luann, you've got all these like really badass loud
Exactly.
characters. Do
That's what I'm
something.
talking about. Right.
That's why
All Lincoln
That's
does is fly a dragon,
yeah.
and that's it.
It's like for God's sake, you know. If I hope they make the Loud's finest hour one day because that would be a great way to redeem things for that. But there you go. I mean, wouldn't that just be the best Loud House, like the best cartoon movie ever made if it was actually real?
Definitely. I've actually seen your Loud's Finest Hour artwork, and I even skimped a little on on your story, and I think it's pretty interesting.
I mean,
I
how many of my
definitely
stories
think
have
it
you
would.
read? Just out of interest, I know this is a tangent, but I have to ask.
Well, I've been reading some of your what was it here? I got it.
B canon timeline,
Your the the spectrals
the
and
spectrals.
Adam and the Super Sibs.
Oh, what?
You know that it's based on your. Oh wait, no, never mind. I'm sorry. This is someone else's. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
This
don't know
is.
what you're on about, mate. I don't know what that is. No,
I'm sorry,
you know
but
my
I
B
did
canon
read
timeline.
your. I meant your Ronnie and Tumble.
Oh yeah, that's
Was
the
what I
one. Yeah,
meant.
that's the one I created. That was like the ending, and that's another thing about this show. You know how obviously you got into it through the whole thing with Ronnie Ann and Becky. That was the first episode you saw. Now, when they first
Yep.
introduced Becky in what was possibly my favourite episode of the show, the Two of
Oh
Clubs,
yes, Two of
that was a
Clubs.
really great episode.
That was a great one.
Yeah,
I loved
and
it because Ronnie Ann and Sid were trying to figure out which club fit them best,
yeah,
and they just kept having trouble.
yeah,
Sid couldn't get into wrestling because of Becky,
yeah,
and
yeah. And
Ronnie
it
Ann
was
didn't
quite
know
a
any
fun episode
jack
actually.
shit about
Yeah,
robotics.
it even had a couple of
So
like sort of emotional moments. Like already early on, you really got you felt the connection between these two, Ronnie and Sid, that you never
exactly,
really did with Lincoln
the,
and Clyde. You were just like,
the chemistry
yeah,
between the two were like. It's like this felt like an actual best friend moment. Like
not a
they're
Lincoln
depressed because
liking a
they
carbon
can't
copy
find
of
a club
himself.
they want to
Yeah,
join,
yeah,
and it's like
yeah. So the Two of
so.
Clubs is
Yeah,
probably
it
my
felt
favourite
genuine.
episode. Well, one of my favourite episodes. Karate Chops would be another. Saving Face might be
Oh
another.
yes, the one
Um,
where Adelaide puts Carl in his place.
Yeah. So there's a few of those, but the point is, it's like with Ronnie Ann and Becky. First, Becky was introduced as someone who was a brute in the ring, but then she was like nice after. Like she was like, "Hey, thank you, goodbye" after the wrestling match, and
Exactly.
you got
Even
that.
in the
But then they made her
episode,
more of a bully later on. They changed her up and made her a bit meaner.
yes.
Um,
Um,
And
And
they
in the
sort of,
episode, I think it's called Trender's Game. I
yeah,
think it's called.
yeah, they had the
She was.
dodgeball
She
episode.
even seemed nice in that one at
Yeah,
first.
yeah, like
Her and
they had
Ronnie
the,
Ann were talking
yeah,
to each other, and it was like scream everything challenge.
yeah. And then, yeah, there was that one. But then at the end of season 2, when they did both the dodgeball episode and the one where she's like, she exposes Ronnie Ann for having a crush on a teacher, and they sort of made
Yep.
out,
It's
okay,
like,
now she's like a brutish bully. And they do sort of continue up to a lesser extent in season 3, not entirely, but you felt
yeah,
like they
she
were,
actually helped someone in the episode For the Record. That episode where she helped Samir try to break a
yeah.
record.
And she does, yeah, she actually
Yeah,
helped
she
her. They
seems
went back
pretty
and forth a
helpful in
bit.
that one.
Like, they went back and forth with whether or not they wanted to make us like a rough friend or a bully or anything in between. I don't know if the show knew what they wanted to do with Becky at times. They could have
Yeah,
they
it
figured
was
that
kind
out a
of
bit
all
better.
over the place. Now
Then
that I
again, I
think of it,
suppose you could say the same about Lynn Jr., who obviously is the Loud House equivalent to that, and she's very inconsistent at times as well. But there you go. I don't think
I
the
guess that's
show's
why a lot
writers.
of fans compare her to the to Lynn's evil twin or whatever.
Yeah,
I guess
but
that's what
it's
a
like.
lot of fans
But
call
the
her.
point is, with Ronnie Ann and Becky, it's like they were sort of having a bit. They were developing a bit of a rivalry between them, maybe, but they never really like concluded anything. Like they never went anywhere with that. And the point of Ronnie and Tumble
No.
was to like put a stamp on that storyline, like to finalize it. You know, Ronnie Ann finally decided she had enough. And that's another thing, because Ronnie Ann changed when she got her own show and the voice actor changed to Isabella Alvarez. She's no longer
Yeah,
tough enough to stand up to Becky particularly anymore, whereas you feel like in the early seasons, that version of Ronnie Ann from the early seasons of the Loud House would have. Um, and I was like, maybe Ronnie Ann just isn't as capable of tapping into her tough side as she once was, and that's the perfect way to finally do a Lynn and Ronnie Ann episode that we always wanted to see but never got. This was like before your time. For years, people wanted to see a story between Lynn and Ronnie Ann, and it never happened. I mean, it took them 7 seasons to do a storyline between Luann and Ronnie Ann, which is another one people wanted to see. Why did it take 7 years? I have no idea.
I
But there you go.
know. It's like Ronnie Ann's a pranking pro, and so is.
Luann,
And
it's like
so
it took
having
them that long
looking
to
up to
do that.
Luann as a mentor is
I
something you'd
know.
think would happen at some
And
point.
it took them until season 7. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But tons of episodes about Flip. Yeah, we can't wait to
Oh
do more of
yeah,
them.
let's
Uh,
let's not forget about our favorite character, Flip. Oh
yeah.
God,
And
God
Scoots and
forbid.
Cheryl and Merrill. And the Casagrandes have the same problem with Sergio and what's not. The shows didn't always focus on the best things. That is a clear fact, which is one of the reasons why I want a reboot one day, so it can reach its full potential. But yeah, it's like with Ronnie and Tumble, it was the way to finally do that episode, Lynn and Ronnie Ann together, like in a scenario that makes sense. Ronnie Ann wants to get her tough side back so that she can confront Becky a bit better. And yeah,
Exactly.
a perfect way. She talks to Lincoln about it because they do like their little video talks sometimes. And he thinks, who do I know that could help her with that? Oh, yeah, Lynn. There you go. Perfect episode.
Exactly.
But the only problem with that is it sort of operates on the basis that Lynn doesn't really know Becky. So obviously, you can't have that episode and the Lynn Becky wrestling episode. They sort of collide with each other, you know what I mean? So you can only sort of
I
pick
get
one, which is
that.
a bit of a shame. Because obviously that's another one. That is something the show could do. Look at Can't Let Them All. Of all the designs they went for with Bella Big Bucks, they went with someone who looks like an older, fat version of Becky. I mean, come on,
Right.
that wasn't an accident. They meant that.
No, it was not. It has to be some kind of
Yeah,
foreshadowing,
you'd like to think
especially
so.
considering she's a wrestling promoter and
Yeah,
her possible daughter slash niece slash whatever is
it.
also into wrestling. So
Yeah,
that
come
made
on.
perfect sense.
Come on, they've gotta be. I even remember that thing I did where I made. This is how I'd do the episode if I were to write it, and I had like 8 or 9
Yes, I
slides,
remember
and I
seeing
sent
that
that
post.
to Jeff Sayers, who wrote Can't Win Them All.
Yeah, and
And I
I
know they
even
see these.
myself
Yeah, I know
on
they
my
see posts
DeviantArt
sometimes.
page came up with
Yeah,
an unofficial title for that
Bell of the Brawl. I
and
think I saw
posted
that
your
one. Yeah,
post in it.
yeah. But I know that they see these posts, so you never know. Jeff Sayers just might have took a bit of inspiration from that. It wouldn't be the first time the show's writers have stole one of my ideas, so there you go.
Exactly.
But yeah,
There has to be something going on behind the scenes.
yeah. But it is what it is. Um, yeah, but to sort of, yeah, I've sort of mentioned a few of my favourite episodes, but I suppose I'll ask you, what are some of your favourite episodes of the show?
Well, definitely one, like I said, one of my favorite episodes is Date with Destiny, the one
Yeah,
which brought back T-Bone and was setting up well, it was the episode where Ronnie Ann and Bobby were trying to get their mom and dad back together
I
because that's what
I vaguely
Ernesto
remember that
Estrella said.
one. I can't remember the name of it. Remember, I've only seen some episodes in full. Um,
Yeah. Well,
I
earlier
do
that
remember it. Yeah,
episode, Ernesto Estrella, the astrologer played by George Lopez,
yeah, yeah,
was saying that they were going to get back together, even though, he's always
yeah.
vague on his predictions, so they kind of misinterpret things sometimes.
Okay.
But yeah, the whole episode was basically just a whole rehashed parent trap scenario
Yeah,
and trying to get their two parents back together. And during that, Maria runs into T-Bone again, and they go on a date. And Ronnie Ann, and Bobby try to try to get rid of him, and they find out he's deathly afraid of pineapples. And it probably one of the funniest scenes. He imagines the pineapple pizza as some kind of monster and gets freaked out.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I'm literally just going to look it up now and just see if I remember some other episodes that I might consider among my favourites. So
another
yeah,
one of my another one of my favorites is another Maria-centered episode
yeah,
called Vacation Days. The one where
yeah,
her and Ronnie Ann are trying to spend the day
yeah.
together,
And that
but
episode
they got
basically highlights the fact that
separated.
she's never there, that she's never in it.
Yeah, yeah. So the two get separated, and there's this funny scene that always cracks me up. This pigeon that drinks Maria's coffee and then starts going on a rampage.
Yeah,
And so then it just goes into a montage of Ronnie
yeah.
Ann and Maria trying to find each other. And then it focuses on the pigeon again, getting more coffee.
Oh
And then
yeah,
we're seeing where it's going
yeah,
on the map.
yeah. Actually, another one of my
And then,
favourites that I've just remembered, the episode "Cursed." Do you remember that one? Now,
yes,
now this is the
the second
second,
Ernesto
and it's
episode.
also the second
That was
episode
another good
where
one.
the Louds and the Casagrandes like fully interact with each other. And what's interesting
Yes,
about
that was
that,
a milestone.
because the
Well,
first
unless you
one,
count the Thanksgiving
yeah, that's what I
episode,
mean. Because the first one had that, but it
which
was
was
so
actually the first.
underwhelming.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
The first one was so underwhelming. The Loudest Thanksgiving, I mean, because
Well,
like,
that's actually the first full episode of The Loud House I've seen back in 2023. Because I
yeah,
figured, since I'm well into the Casagrandes already, I might as well go back and find out what their connection is with the Louds. And yeah, so that's what I did. The first episode I watched was The Loudest Thanksgiving, which pretty much tells you everything, that Bobby is Lori's boyfriend, and that Lincoln and Ronnie Ann uh, became good friends
yeah,
after supposedly having a rough patch.
yeah. But the point is, like, in the Loudest Thanksgiving, if you rewind back to when that was first coming out, it was the first time we'd really seen the Louds and the Casagrandes interact. It's the first time we really saw any of the Louds even interact properly with Ronnie Ann back then. Um, and there was so much
Exactly.
expectation, there was so much potential, and what we actually got was, okay, it was all right, but it was just some
It was
pointless
just two
squabbling.
families trying to fight over who they want over for
Yeah, and it's
Thanksgiving.
like there was barely any
And plus,
interactions, and
and
it's
who
like,
better than good old Flip to tell the story?
yeah, and it's
Jeez.
like, yeah, like they could have done so much better than that. And I will admit, Curse did give us a bit more of just like the two families like properly just casually interacting with each other, the sort of thing we wanted to see from the Thanksgiving episode, but didn't really get hardly anything of.
I know that
So I
was
do
good,
sort of
and of
admire
course,
Cast for fixing what the Thanksgiving episode wasn't able to do properly. And it
right,
was just a
and
really fun
plus,
story.
George Lopez's performance as Ernesto kept me on my seat
Yeah, yeah.
because he's always great. I love George Lopez. He's
I'm
one of
not
my
that
favorite
familiar with him,
comedians.
but I know of him. He's all right. Um,
And the fact that he actually guest stars as a character on the show is priceless.
yeah. I mean, what are there any other ones I particularly? Again, I haven't seen all the episodes, but I mean, yeah, I did like season 3. I did sort of start
I mean,
phasing out by then. I haven't seen that many episodes of season 3, to be honest. Um, are they any good to you? Like, I haven't seen that many of them.
I've seen every episode of the Casagrandes,
Yeah,
and good or even technically bad, I still enjoy them.
yeah,
Every single one for one reason or another,
yeah.
whether it be because they're genuinely entertaining or if they're just guilty pleasures.
Yeah, that's fair enough, I guess. Uh, yeah, it's one of those like it only had 3 seasons, but I will say I think generally it's considered most episodes are quite good, at least from what I've seen. It did have some memorable characters. It did have some great episodes. Um, I don't know. It's one of those. I still think there's more you could do with this cast, and obviously they could come back a bit more in the Loud House. But if you are going to bring them back, don't do it too often. And when you do, don't waste the
Exactly.
occasions. Don't waste the occasions by of all characters bringing back Sergio for an episode. We don't want that. You know.
Oh yeah. Party
Yeah.
Foul was probably one of my least favorite
Yeah.
crossovers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just Sergio hanging out with the pets.
And it's like,
Okay
oh,
then.
really, whatever. It's like you could have done something a bit more interesting than that, writers. But that's the thing. I think as talented as the writers for both shows are, they're creatively stagnant. I don't think they understand what's best for the show from a creative and writing standpoint. You know what I mean? They're talented, but they don't understand like what people want to see. Um, and that's why we get episodes like Party Foul and Let's Break a Deal and all that sort of thing, where we could be getting episodes like the one I suggested about Lynn and Becky wrestling, for example, or more episodes of the
Exactly.
Loud Family, etc., etc. But there you go.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and that's why I actually do. I recommend you read some more of my B canon stories because they are basically. A few of them are Casagrandes based as well. Other than Ronnie and Tumble, there's also a rough phase, which was what first introduced the idea of Maria having a rougher side to her back when she was younger, which I'm sure you've seen
I
some of my
remember
recent
seeing
artwork
fan
of.
art for that on
Yeah, I
DeviantArt.
did that
Yes.
recently. And that's where that idea came from, a rough phase, which I wrote about 4 years ago now. So you might like that. Obviously, you've seen Ronnie and Tumble, or have you still got some of it left to read?
No, I think I read a good chunk of it.
Did you get to the part where she and Becky, Ronnie Ann and Becky, finally have their big throwdown?
Not quite yet,
No, so
but
you've got a little bit more of that
I'm
too.
getting
You'll
to it.
enjoy it, I'm sure. And there's also recently I did No Time Like the Present, which is a sequel to the Casagrandes movie, where Punguari and her family come back and visit Great Lake City.
Ah, yes, I remember seeing
Yeah,
posts of that on
yeah.
Reddit.
So I think you'll
I,
like all
I
three of
like
those.
how I really like how her parents look in those photos.
Yeah. I mean, I have to give credit to Zexo guy because he's the sort of one who came. Well, he's the one who first commissioned me to do that story in the first place because I wasn't going to do it otherwise. But I think he also helped me like come up with the designs for the parents. And you dumb guy 123 came up with the design for Punguari's casual clothes as well. So credit to them where it's due.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think you'll like those, and you'll probably like some of the other stories as well because it's just the Loud House and the Casagrandes, done exactly like the show, but focusing on more interesting things that people want to see. That's the idea.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, who out of the Loud House, who would be some of your favourite characters?
Well, like I said, my personal favorite Loud siblings are Lenny, Luna, and Lynn.
Yeah.
And I've
Okay.
also kind of grown on Lucy and Lily
Yeah.
too.
Okay. Well, you'll probably like a few stories like have you Survival Instincts? There's a link in an episode. I've done a couple of recent spec scripts about Luna, um, Souls of Art, and the Laughing Melody. I think you'll like those. Um, Lenny gets quite a big role in the Quest for Glory and in Trial and Terror. So, and Lucy, I have a Lucy story in Dark Days. So there's quite a few I think you'd like there.
Hmm. I mean, yes, I'll definitely have to check those out.
Yeah. I mean, remember, like, I know, yeah. But anyway, we're going into tangent now. Don't worry, we always do in these videos. It's not a problem. It's just a casual talk, isn't it? Um, but anyway, yeah. Overall, Casagrandes, very good show. A bit short-lived. Not all the episodes were pure gold. Personally, I didn't follow it as closely as some other people probably did. But what I did see was mostly very good and it had some great characters. Um, Obviously, if you were to summarise quickly your overall thoughts in like one or two sentences.
Um, I think it's great. It's one of my favorite recent shows in years.
Yeah.
Aside from recently, I've been Star of the Forces of Evil versus the Forces of Evil, which I've been watching,
Okay.
as suggested by another Reddit user named Sebastian Shook, who's actually the one who came up with the Spectral series. I'm sorry I confused you earlier.
Yeah, yeah.
That was
That's all
his
right.
story.
Yeah.
Adam and the Super Sibs.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, so what about you guys in the comment section? Let us know. What are your overall thoughts on the Casagrandes? What did you think of all three seasons and what do you think of the movie? What were some of your favourite episodes? Who were some of your favourite characters to come out of that show? Would you like to see more of some of the Casagrandes characters in the Loud House? And what would you like to see in the future if they were to come back? Let us know all that in the comment section below. Yeah, thank you for being on this podcast with me, JPOmare.
Oh, no problem. This was
Yeah,
an honor.
yeah. So yeah, with that being said, I will see all you guys next time.